MEC, good morning to you and thank you for your time. So 2,500 new recruits, they are stationed in your province. How big a difference do you think they're going to make?
Thank you so much for bringing us into this particular conversation. And from the onset, I would want to say that any person that goes into the South African Police Service selects and chooses a noble profession. Hence, we are very determined to ensure that our oversight can always lead to better service delivery. Based on my current understanding and also attending yesterday in Paarl, there was 1,081 that graduated after they have successfully completed their basic policing development program. I'm going to repeat the figure again. It is 1,081. We were informed that the Western Cape will receive 2,600 new recruitees, considering that our policing needs and priorities, which we as a province tabled to the National Minister, have indicated that we potentially have a shortfall of between 8 and 9,000 officers within our service here in the Western Cape. But nonetheless, we welcome new recruitees. We obviously see that as an added benefit. Hence, having this discussion is so important.
Yeah. MEC, I can't help but read in that response that, yes, you are grateful that there are these police officers, 1,081 of them, but you mentioned a shortfall of between 8 and 9,000. Do you think that could be made up for by the peace officers who are, in a way, conducting a similar job to that of the police?
Thank you so much for this question, because that's exactly what we have attempted from our side. For example, we looked at our murder hotspots, and in the city of Cape Town, we have 13 of our murder hotspots that contribute towards over 50% of all contact crime, including murder in our province. Our province has 151 stations. So I think anyone would be able to see the gravity of 13 stations out of 151 contributing to over 50% of our crime. We have then placed our lead officers in those murder hotspots in order to be the extra boots and visibility, and we have over 1,300 in our predominantly murder hotspots. We have also endeavored to roll out our peace officer and traffic warden program, where we have initiated that particular program across various municipalities in order to be the extra boots, but also ensure that law enforcement can be ramped up. We have consistently tried to step in and step up, as we are still calling for the evolution of policing so that these decisions can be made here in our province and not all the way in Pretoria when it comes to the allocation. But nonetheless, our working relationship with the South African Police Service have drastically increased over the last year and a half, because we are ultimately ensuring for partnership, for collaboration, for integration, and also holding each other accountable duly.
Yeah. MEC, your province is a tourist attraction, much like KZN, it could be argued. And tourist safety comes to mind. I can just recall the missing German tourist, that young man, I think his name is Nick Frischke. He remains missing. What is being done to try and assure tourists in the Western Cape that they are safe, particularly the Table Mountain area? That seems to be problematic.
Thank you. We have already had discussions with Sam Parks, with the City of Cape Town, our department, and the South African Police Service. We have ramped up a number of initiatives in those areas that you have mentioned, particularly Table Mountain and what we have seen. And just yesterday, I was so delighted when there was one known operator, one known gang member that was the person that was responsible for executing a number of robberies within the Lion's Head, within the Table Mountain district, and he was apprehended. We had to make sure that the visibility is there, but also to do sting operations. And I wouldn't want to discuss the sting operations in much detail, because that is one way to catch these criminals that that is tormenting our communities. But it is being ramped up, and I'm quite delighted when we look at our collaboration, even with the City of Cape Town, where the City of Cape Town have deployed since November an additional 80 officers, law enforcement officers, directly into those tourist hotspots, considering that many locals, many from other provinces, but also internationals will be visiting the beautiful Western Cape, and we would want to welcome them so that we don't see the matter that happened in Nyanga or the matter that happened to the tourists that you have mentioned. We are wanting to ensure everyone, locals, visitors, are ultimately safe in our province, and we are saying that we have made great strides, but we would be the first province to say that we know we have a long way to go, considering that we have clear objectives in order to not only reduce the murder rate drastically, but to create safety across our province. And when I assessed the murder rate over the last 5 years, this province was the only one that had a reduction in murders over a 5-year period. I saw increases in KZN, in Gauteng, and in the Eastern Cape, whereas our province received a reduction, but definitely we have a long way to go, and we are committed to that.
So with these more than 1,000 police officers, these new recruits, with that, it'll help with police visibility, MEC, but it doesn't stop there, because yes, a police officer may be in front of the criminal now and they are not going to do what they had planned to do, but once that officer is out of sight, the criminal does what they intended to do in the first place. I want to talk about the adequacy of police training. I know that you will probably not be able to judge these new recruits just yet, but looking back at what you have, are you satisfied with the level of police training, and what can be improved upon in order for cases that they take to court that we are able to secure convictions?
The question you ask is extremely vital, considering that the mandate of the South African Police Service is to prevent, is to combat, and to investigate crime. If I repeat, prevent, and that speaks directly to visible policing, that is a key deterrent to crime. When we speak about combating crime, that is also when there is special units that is targeting certain levels of crime. For example, the anti-gang unit, if it's the flying squad, etc. But what we have seen consistently, where we have a burdened, overburdened detective service, where our detectives in our province sit with a caseload of over 200 dockets on average per detective. It's humanly impossible to ultimately investigate and to ultimately ensure that there's detective work taking place in that case. And what we have done in our policing needs and priorities, and I want to link it back, the Constitution affords our provincial governments to table what is referred to as a policing needs and priorities. We table that to the National Minister. We have often indicated that besides the under-resourcing, there's also the under-training, because after this 9 months of training that these new recruitees have received, and it's a basic policing training, after that, there should always be ongoing training. So we assess and we monitor the ongoing training within the South African Police Service. And quite sadly, at some stations, we often see that many of the members that are due to go for training do not opt to take the training. And on the other hand, I also understand that when there's under-resourcing, that relevant commander might not even want to sign off on the further training that particular person must undertake. Hence, we have made recommendations in that regard, how the entire training within the South African Police Service and the continued training can be ramped up, but also to be very specific. And we have actually done one pilot program in the city of Cape Town together with the South African Police Service in an area called Mitchell's Plain. And there we undertook the evidence-based policing model. We actually saw that in that particular area, when evidence-based policing theories and objectives was used, we actually saw dramatic results in that case, which we are very proud of and that we are ultimately wanting to see ramped up across our entire province. But to answer the question, under-resourcing, under-training, deeply affects how our residents live, because we are wanting to strengthen the arm of the SAPS. I've engaged so many dedicated officers that is going to work tirelessly over this festive season, and law enforcement, and we obviously want people to be safe in our province. And I often feel for the SAPS members that are overworked, overburdened. Hence, we are continuing in our efforts to ensure that we get our fair allocation. And that will always be our sense to help SAPS, to help law enforcement, and ultimately our residents.
Yeah, that fair allocation statement, MEC, I think it prompts a final question. I was about to end this conversation, but it leads me to ask the question whether in the Western Cape, are there no-go areas or no-go zones because of criminality? Are there such places there?
Many people within various parts of the Western Cape will feel that they are not safe if they go into a particular area. Many of the residents in an area called Nyanga or an area called Delft or Mveleni, many people will feel unsafe in that area. There we have been very straight with the South African Police Service that when we looked at the police to population ratio, what we currently have in our country is that we have a police to population ratio at 1 officer for every 400 members of society. 1 officer for every 400 residents across our country. In our province, the average is 1 officer for every 550 residents. If I take any person to Nyanga, to Philippi, to Delft, the ratio there would be 1 officer for every 800 to 1,000 community members. Hence, we are firmly, and it at times makes us frustrated, angry, considering that those deployments can easily be done with a buy-in from the national government, should those deployment strategies just be devolved to a more proactive approach where we are wanting to see the policing to population ratios are actually addressed. So it's not fair in our assessment, and these are ongoing conversations and discussions that we consistently have with stakeholders, with the South African Police Service, and that is what the Premier has tasked me with, to ensure that we not only get our fair allocation, but we fight for that, and if need be, take it all the way via a intergovernmental dispute, considering that we have launched one now via the budget process, whereby in year, the Western Cape government's budget was cut by over 1.1 billion rand, which is affecting frontline services here in the Western Cape, considering that is an in-year budget. Imagine someone comes to you on the 20th of the month and you have budgeted for that entire month, and someone says that you now need to give X amount back, considering that there has been other matters that's been arising. That can deeply cripple the family, the household, fuel for the rest of the month, bread money for the rest of the month. And that is ultimately what is happening in our country now.
Reagan Allen, let me thank you very much for your time, and very, very distressing figures there that you were counting in terms of police to population ratio. It's very, very scary indeed. The Western Cape Community Safety MEC, Reagan Allen there.